Well, I'm super excited and happy that you guys took the time out of a Saturday morning to come talk to an old faculty member about your journey. I feel very lucky to have you guys come here so that I can put myself back in the mind of an undergraduate freshman and get the opportunity to ask you guys questions about your journey, right? So for some context, Brandan and Elizabeth are undergrads in my lab, super successful, um, offers from big name universities for grad school and industry as well. So the first question I want to ask you guys is to just describe briefly your journey through education and how you got here to where you are today.
Okay, sounds good. So, in terms of how I got to where I am now, I guess starting from high school, I've always been interested specifically in chemistry and math. So, going in, I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do, but I chose my major as chemical engineering because I thought it was interesting, even though I still didn't have a clear idea of what this major is and how I'm going to get to where I want to be through this major. So coming in, I interacted with a lot of new freshmen, and I think it's really through, talking with them and then being in that environment where basically I was introduced to a lot of opportunities offered at UCLA, and I realized that a lot of them are getting into research, and that seemed to be interesting to me, so I wanted to try it out. So that's how I initially contacted a TA because during office hour, we were talking about his research. So I was like, I'm interested in your research. Is there opening in your lab? So that's how I eventually joined my first lab, Professor Yang's lab. And in that lab, I was doing primarily organic synthesis for solar cells. And over time, I also developed an interest in batteries, especially since I think I'm an undergrad. Hi, Vanessa. As an undergrad, I think it's really important for me to just, broaden my experience, just to, get experience in fields that I think I might be interested in for grad school. Since it's not completely set yet. So I decided to also branch into battery. That's how I met Professor Zhang. And yeah, I worked on several projects. So over time, I realized that I just really enjoy the research process of, asking a question and then trying to find ways on your own to answer it. Like a question that maybe other people haven't answered. It's not like a textbook answer, but you have to go find out yourself. So I really liked that process. And I think it's also very motivating for me personally to find out those answers. It's not like an assignments given to you. So it's a lot more motivating. So I decided to apply for grad school, and I will be going to grad school this upcoming fall.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So, Brandan, how about you? Describe your journey. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm from the San Diego area. I went to a public high school. Going into college, I picked chemical engineering. Wanted to do something with energy. I think originally I wanted to go in the oil and gas sector. I think that as unfortunate as fossil fuels are to our environment, I think unfortunately we still rely on them heavily. So I thought if I can make these processes more sustainable, they're not going away anytime soon, and making the world a better place, use my talents for good. That was kind of my motivating factor going in. But when I went into college, taking chemical engineering classes, interacting with oil and gas industries, I found it wasn't a great culture fit, and I think it wasn't really what I wanted to do. Found out at the end of the day. I had the opportunity to pursue research also from a young age, a young time in my career. There are these faculty advising hours at UCLA where each faculty mentor is assigned to every student in the department. And it turns out my faculty mentor was Dr. Yuzhang in the department. He also does energy storage research, and I had a chance to talk with him. And we had a conversation. Turns out there's a spot open in his lab, and Yeah, I joined from there. It was great. I did some research into cobalt alternatives and battery cathodes. So seeing how we can use metal fluorides as alternatives there. And it was great. It was great getting a foray into the experimental techniques that were used in the battery field. But then, an interesting thing happened. It's COVID-19, March 2020. I'm sure all of us remember that. And we were all sent remotely. And I think from there, I got a chance to do some computational work. Had a chance to work at Caltech, doing the summer program there, doing some electrochemical modeling for different electrode architectures. For me, when it came to research, yes, enjoyed the research process as well, but I also enjoyed learning in different environments and experiencing different cultures and different research areas. So working at UCLA with Dr. Yuzhang Liu for that time, then coming to Caltech, working in their summer program in a different lab, and then coming to UCLA again after that summer, working in Dr. Lee's lab here, also doing some computational and experimental work there. But then also having a time the National Lab in this most recent past summer at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. So getting both the academic and national lab environments very insightful to me. As far as current plans go, I think I'm not quite as set as Elizabeth is, still interested in industry R&D and still considering some of my grad school offers.
Yeah, thanks, Brandan. I think it's so important, like you said, to explore so many different things to make sure you know what you like and don't like. Elizabeth and Brandan, you guys are super successful in terms of getting these prestigious research internships, scholarships, industry internships and things like that. And I want to ask you, maybe I'll start with Brandan, how do I get it? What are the steps I can do to get this? Maybe start generally with general advice and then be specific at UCLA Chemie. How does one secure these nice opportunities?
Yeah, great question. And I want to say there's no one right answer. I think the first thing to do in identifying how to secure the opportunity is finding something that you're interested in. I think that the most successful candidates search for something that they're passionate about. What gets you out of bed every morning? What drives you to do something? And I think once you have that initial interest, the rest of things come very easily. If you find yourself considering something you don't really want to do, your profile or your application won't look as good as someone who really does want to do it. So first, find something that you want to do. And that goes for industry, research, whatever professional opportunity there is. Something where you have some interest in. The second thing is, I think, talking to people who actually have had similar opportunities or in the past, right? So when I was applying to many of my many of the internship roles / opportunities, I would talk with upperclassmen who I was friends with. So joining professional organizations like AICHE, interacting with your TAs during office hours, these social interactions, as mundane as they sound, actually can be really important and really highlight your interest. I think often it's intimidating for younger students to be like, I don't have this XYZ experience. They may not be applying. That's all right that you don't have that XYZ experience. Just make sure your passion, your interest genuinely shows throughout your application. I think that's my experience, what I've been told at least, that's what people look for the most in applications from students, right? It's great if you have, prior battery experience, or I guess in this field especially, but really the curiosity, the drive for intellectual growth, that's what's really going to make your application shine through. As far as directly for Chemie, faculty advising hours, great way to interact with faculty. They can give very strong advice. They've been through it before, and I mentioned the other clubs, AICHE, and you don't have to join the chemical engineering club in our department, right? There are all sorts of clubs tailored to your interests. BMES, the Biomedical Engineering Society, great organization for those students interested in pharmaceuticals. There's also ASME, if you're interested in more of the mechanical stuff as well. SWE is a great organization for female students in engineering, very strong network there. I think joining these organizations also isn't mandatory. It's a great benefit, but just interacting with some of the upper level chemies in the department, and putting yourself out there and trying a lot of different professional opportunities, whether it be through research or through extracurriculars. I think that way is expose yourself to things so you can grow and learn.
Well, thanks, Brandon. That's awesome. If I could summarize that response, it would be like three major key pieces of advice I heard. One was, don't do something unless you're excited and passionate about it, right? You're waking up and you want to do it. If you wake up and you dread doing it, don't do that. So that's number one. Number two, I heard was, interact with upperclassmen, people in those positions that you've had or have had those opportunities that you are pursuing, and talk to them, pick their brain. And then third is proactive, right? Join these clubs, email and reach out to those hiring managers and get your name out there. And it can't hurt, right? Just a polite, message. So I think that's really, really great advice. And maybe after, you mentioned a number of organizations, maybe you actually later you can compile those, can put it in like the caption or whatnot, so it's easily accessible, right? So that's good. Elizabeth, anything to add to Brandon's comments here?
Yeah, I think I agree mostly with everything he said. I just want to emphasize the importance of interacting with other people. I think that's really what motivated me to, keep going in research. Even though for me, I would say majority of it came from the grad students of the lab that I joined, and including also my postdoc. So going in, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I just wanted to try out this research experience, but then they were really encouraging, and they really kind of like demystified what research and grad school is for me. And they also encouraged me to go out and try to apply for scholarships and programs. So I would say that really helped me a lot. Like even as a freshman, I felt like, I was I can't apply to all these things, and there are all these opportunities out there I need to take advantage of. So I guess one additional advice that I want to emphasize for, especially if you're young, if you're a freshman, is that don't think you're too inexperienced to apply for anything, right? Because you never know, and you would never gain that experience unless you try it out.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. That's really good. I totally agree. Having good mentors to kind of guide you through all the processes that you're unfamiliar with is really valuable. And your point about just trying, putting yourself out there and trying, and not being afraid to fail, right? That's really important, because I'll tell you, I don't think you'll ever be fully ready, right? Even in grad school, you might have had undergrad experiences, but when you're in grad school as a grad student, you're gonna experience all the things that you're unfamiliar with. And even as a faculty, right? You come in, I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning, maybe still don't have it as a clear idea, right? But you have good mentors, and as long as you put your effort into it, not half commitment, I think that will be very helpful. And I think these advices are really good for Vanessa. I think, you've been applying to some summer internships, so definitely, leverage these, excellent students on the panel here. They can definitely give you great advice. So I want to move on to a little bit more specifically talking about undergraduate research. And I want to ask Elizabeth, when you first joined a research group, what did you look for in a research group that led you to join Dr. Yang's group specifically, and then my group after?
I see. For me, initially, I didn't know enough to think, oh, at a research group culture and all that, like, the format and everything was important. I didn't know anything about that. The only thing that was accessible to me was the direction of their research. So for me, it was, oh, am I interested in what they're doing? Would I be okay with spending my time to work on this? Because I think to most people, research is a little dry. It's a very dry process if you're not interested in what you're doing, because it is slow and it takes a lot of effort to get maybe one thing to work. So, if you're not interested, if you're not passionate about seeing the result, then it's difficult to keep going. So for me, I thought it was interesting to see, oh, solar cells, they're making like thin film solar cells that can stick on window panels. That's great. So I thought that was interesting, and that's why I decided to go. And then they assigned me with the synthesis group where I did organic synthesis. And I know to a lot of people, maybe OChem wasn't, great. They don't like OChem. But I would say, my research experience actually helped me with that. Seeing OChem in person, seeing, actual reactions, and sometimes the reactions that I just did is exactly the reaction I just learned in class. So you can see that in real life, and that made it very real for me, and that was exciting. So I would say that join a research group where you find it very rewarding to do what you're doing.
Yeah, I really resonate with that, Elizabeth. Being interested in the research is first and foremost, right? When I was an undergrad, I had no idea what it was, right? So I wanted to ask, what actually is undergraduate research and what do you do?
Most undergrads that I know, when they started doing research, they supported a graduate student when they were starting off doing research in their respective projects, right? So don't be scared, it's like, I have to, pursue this independent research right away. That's hardly ever the case. Of course, that's something you want to do. I think for many students coming to UCLA, it can be kind of intimidating pursuing research, approaching a professor or student. I certainly was a little frightened first, a little scared, like, okay, am I going to be as technically competent as I need to be? And the answer is, it's actually not as bad. They understand you're very new to the field. You're going to be unfamiliar with these concepts. You're very much a beginner, and they're going to, train you to become, a great undergraduate researcher. And of course, it has to come from your end. The motivation, as I mentioned previously, you have to have that drive, I think, of course, to execute these projects and help the graduate student and eventually become independent, as I am in the group. But certainly, don't be afraid to try it. I think I really want to emphasize, have that courage.
Thanks, Brandan. Yeah, that's really good. You definitely shouldn't feel intimidated. Communication is key, right, between the undergrad and the advisor for what you want to get out of the experience and what the advisor expects out of that. What are your specific tips for other undergraduate researchers to be successful in the lab, right? So we have Vanessa here. What would you tell Vanessa that would be, help her being successful in the lab for research?
I think for undergrads, it's especially important for you to manage your time effectively. So you have classes to balance, you might be in some clubs, extracurricular activities, and then you also need the social aspect, interacting with your peers, and on top of that, you do research. And so I think it's important for you to really, for example, just set aside time every week, like say, oh, this time to this time or this day, I'm going to just do research related work. Otherwise, you'll never get to it because, other things are piling up. So I think it's important for you to, plan ahead, manage your time effectively, make sure that you are making enough time to do research of interests. So another advice I would give is to be more proactive effective in terms of like communicating with your grad student or your professor. So a lot of the times, since you're not a grad student in the group, so then it's difficult. I don't want to say it's easier for people to forget about you, but it's difficult for people to spend a lot of time to take care of you almost, because they're also busy. Like, think of grad students, they're very busy with their own projects, so you have to like self-report to them. I think that would be good, so that they know, oh, you're actually interested. Oh, I'll take you seriously. So then I think that's a really important tip to be successful.
Yeah, I think, Elizabeth, that is a great point. I think coming from my perspective, right, I'm advising 8 graduate students, right, 4 PhDs and 4 master's students, as well as all of you guys undergrad. And I think, I learned this myself, right? Last quarter, we didn't have a recurring meeting. And so it was very easy to kind of forget, like 2 or 3 weeks go by and I'm like, oh, I haven't heard from Elizabeth or Brandan in a while, right? And so that's why I think this quarter was much more effective. We now have a recurring meeting where we can just kind of check in. And I think that's really important. And so what you said about being proactive and, kind of no one's going to be babysitting you, right? You're almost like being an adult. And it's very hard, I think, for an undergrad, right? Because you're kind of still growing up, but you're expected to be this adult. But I think it's a really good experience, and part of the maybe like a training wheels could be this recurring meeting you have, so that the advisor knows, like, hey, even if you didn't do anything and you just read papers or read things, you can talk about that and update your advisor on what you've been up to. So great advice. So you guys have been very, very successful, but what advice would you give to students who are kind of struggling?
Every rejection is opportunity for growth, right? So I think Dr. Lee talked about this too. Groups publish only successful results, right? They don't publish the unsuccessful data, right? So, but every unsuccessful experiment, every unsuccessful trial is really an opportunity for you to grow and learn, more about what you're doing, right? And that's not only in research, but in life in general, right? For every interview that you don't get, every interview you don't hear back from, every resume that got rejected, it gives you opportunity to improve, right? And this is something I think everyone still deals with, right? I'm still growing with this myself. So, maybe your resume can be less busy, right? And this goes along with, reaching out to people and seeing how you can improve. Maybe you need to practice articulating more. Maybe your presentation wasn't quite polished, right? So this iterative process of improvement for every rejection that you receive can be, frustrating at times. It can take a while. Everyone grows at different stages. And some people get extremely lucky, some people don't, right? So understand that there's a lot of randomness in this world, and being resilient, understanding that your time will come eventually, is something that's helped me eventually through my life.
Yeah, beautiful. I really like that answer, Brandan. And if I could summarize again, it's the first part is, understanding that there's so many things out of your control, and controlling the things that you can control. That's where your efforts should be, maximizing those aspects with all the previous advice we just talked about. And the second thing you mentioned was staying resilient, in the sense of, taking every rejection and failure as an opportunity to learn and grow, such that, if you're continuing to face rejection and failure, and you continue doing the same things and not changing things and expecting a different result, that is kind of like, in research, if you keep doing the same experiment and expect the same or expecting a different result, that's like just nonsense, right? That we always need to change a little bit. If this experiment is telling me, oh, this is something wrong, right? Then let's change a variable and see how the results come out. And so it's very similar to what you're saying is, I didn't do well in this internship interview, what could I improve on, right? So this iterative process you mentioned, that's really good. So I have one last question for you guys. And I want to ask you guys, what are you proud of most during your undergraduate time at UCLA?
I would say in general, the fact that I really challenged myself to do what I thought would be impossible. So maybe one specific example is sophomore year, toward the end of my sophomore year in Professor Yang's lab, I was given the opportunity to write a review paper that is actually targeted to be published on Nature Reviews. And I was a sophomore undergrad, and my postdoc just gave me this task and said, "You can do it," right? We don't really have time to write this, but you draft out an outline. So I was like, "What is a review paper?" A part of me is like, I don't want to do this. I don't think I'm qualified. I don't have much knowledge in this. But I decided to just take it as training, right? Of course, they will be there to edit and polish my writing. And I think just why not try it out? I think that I really challenged myself that way, and thought of myself as, beyond just an undergrad. So, reading a lot of papers and summarizing the results and coming up with a review paper, even though it's not great. I look at it now and it'll be like, this is not very well written, but I think just the fact that I decided to take this opportunity and challenge myself, I've grown a lot from it. I've learned so much from writing that review paper, and it has made research more real for me.
Yeah, Elizabeth, writing a paper in Nature Reviews, right? This is a very prestigious journal. And most oftentimes senior grad students are tasked to write this, right? And so you being a sophomore, I can definitely understand the intimidation factor. But it sounds like you had that courage to be bold, right? And challenge yourself into something that you might not feel you're qualified for, but giving it your best shot, I think is really good piece of advice. So I really want to say I'm very, very proud of you guys, both Elizabeth and Brandan. Excellent examples of superstar undergrads at UCLA. You guys certainly have set the bar very high for Vanessa, but I'm confident that she'll meet that bar as well, right? So I've been, dominating the questions, but Vanessa, if there's any questions that you want to ask, our panel here, feel free. Floor is yours.
Yeah, actually, when would you guys say is the best time to look for summer internships?
I can start. It kind of depends on what you want to do, right? So if you're looking for example, I know a lot of students in our department interested in petrochemicals. That industry usually recruits in the beginning of the school year, so I think early fall. Other industries, like for example, semiconductor or pharmaceutical, they recruit a little later in the year, also in the fall, but sometimes in the winter. Research REUs, oftentimes it's actually winter break is a great time because those application deadlines are like late February, early March. Right? Yeah, for grad school apps, I think Elizabeth can also chime in here too. I think most of them will be due before December, or like December 15th, December 1st. It's like the popular deadline.
Yeah, I think mostly Brandan said everything. I think internship wise, I don't really have much summer internship experience, but in terms of research, just prepare ahead of time, find out what professor you want to work with, contact professors to write recommendation letters. Yeah, like Brandan said, usually they're due around January, February.
Hello everyone, I'm Nick, the editor of this video and another member of Lee Lab. If you want to see a second part to this interview where Brandon and Elizabeth actually ask questions to Professor Lee about his time at UCLA, then be sure to comment down below and I'll get started on editing and uploading that as soon as possible. Alternatively, if you want something already posted, our most recent video is here, and a video that I actually played a role in making is here. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.